drives out bugs. It finds inaccuracies, it finds slanted points of view. And it's not just at Wikipedia that conversation improves knowledge. It's in every mailing list that you're on, just about. I'm on a mailing list that discusses Federal Communication Commission issues, which are internet policy issues, about which I have an interest. The discussion is way over my head. There's one guy on, I've been on this list for years. There's one guy named Harold. Harold is brilliant. So there's some new ruling. Doesn't get covered by the newspapers because it's too, it's not important enough for the newspapers, but it matters to me. I get the mailing list, and there's Harold explaining the decision and contextualizing it, making sense of it. But it's not just Harold. It's a mailing list. So somebody else will say, great post, Harold, thank you very much, but I think you forgot, or did you compare, or would you answer? And so the conversation goes on. Sometimes they argue. The point is this. Harold's a wonderful resource. He's a genuine expert. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he has credentials or not. I don't care. I have learned over the years to trust him. He's brilliant at what he does. The mailing list is better than Harold. I learn more from the mailing list than I do simply from Harold. I'd rather be on the mailing list than simply on Harold's newsletter because the conversation in the mailing list drives out bugs, it surfaces new ideas. Conversations are smarter than individuals. Mailing lists are smarter than individuals. Knowledge is between us. Our old metaphysical idea in the West that knowledge is something that's in our heads, which is this bizarre, semi-psychotic idea, it's a schizophrenic idea that we live inside our heads, we know is demonstrably false on the web, where the knowledge is between us, whether it's at Wikipedia or it's on a mailing list or in any of the other discussions. It can't be in our head because it's on the mailing list. Our kids, too. If you're in an area of some affluence, your kids are doing their homework on their computer. They're probably doing it on the internet, which means they have 4 or 5 instant messaging sessions open. Talking with their friends about, not politics, it's kids, sorry. They're talking about sports, they're talking about movies and boys and girls, but they're also talking about their homework. They're saying, what did you get for question number 4? I can't figure out why the teacher is asking this or that. They're doing their homework together, which is wonderful. This is what we want them to do. We do our homework together, don't we? Yet we're sending our kids off to do their homework in the corner. It was Descartes who really screwed this up for us. He sat in the corner like this in a closed room with too much heat, and he came up with the secrets of the universe. And ever since, and actually somewhat before, we thought that the way to knowledge is to sit alone in a room with too much heat and just think things by yourself. But it's not the way we really operate. We talk with one another, and we get smarter because of it. But we're training our kids to be little Descartes here. So meanwhile, they're subverting us because they, of course, are learning together. And of course we want them to. Nevertheless, increasingly, at least in the United States, we're testing them like this, individually. And this disjuncture is so severe, we are breeding a generation of cynics about education, which is not a good thing. And the last point has to do with trust and fallibility. So if you go to the great Encyclopedia Britannica and you open it up, you are right to believe what's in there simply because it's in there. Being in the Britannica, the great English language encyclopedia, confers credibility. If you open up Wikipedia at random, you are not right to believe what's in there simply because it's in there. I am a huge supporter of Wikipedia. I think it has tremendous credibility. So I'm not saying, oh, don't believe Wikipedia. In fact, the opposite. I want to know why. Where does Wikipedia's credibility come from? Because it has, for me, a great deal. Well, we know where Britannica's comes. We know where Britannica's comes from because Britannica tells us. They've got credentialed experts and a system by which articles are commissioned and inspected and reviewed, and people have degrees from great universities and are famous people. So that works. Wikipedia, of course, doesn't have that. It's an anonymous, or at least pseudonymous, creation. So why do any of its articles have any credibility? And in part, there's lots of reasons I won't go through, including you may know something about the topic, and you can check the discussion page, which is something we should be teaching our children to do. The great transparency of knowledge there. But there's one thing in particular I find really interesting about Wikipedia's credibility. See the notice at the top? Wikipedia encourages you, because we are all editors of Wikipedia, encourages you to put in these notices that say that the Wikipedia article is not correct, be wary, be careful of it. There are over 100 of these already made. They read like a list of all the ways that an encyclopedia can go wrong. And if you have one that isn't there yet, then just make it. Make your own, because it's Wikipedia. You can do that. So you stick it up there. In fact, here's some of the others. This article appears to contradict another article. This article appears to contradict itself. It doesn't seem appropriate for an encyclopedia. Has not been verified and needs to cite sources. Reads like an advertisement. It reads like a sermon. And then this really important one, the neutrality is disputed, because Wikipedia is all about people who disagree coming up with articles that are neutral enough that everybody agrees on them. Quite remarkable. It seems obvious to me that Wikipedia's willingness to put up notices saying its articles are not very good, in fact, increases Wikipedia's credibility. Remember I said years and years ago, I know it must feel like, that one of the important things about government is that it is on our side. That's what these statements do for Wikipedia. These statements tell us implicitly that Wikipedia is on our side. It only wants us to know our world better. It is not interested in presenting itself as the authority. It doesn't want to do that. It just wants to help us understand our world better. And the question is why you will never see this here. It's because the traditional authorities based in print, which lends itself to this type of authority, are in the business of appearing authoritative. And so for them, errors and mistakes, that is, being human, wears away at them. It wears away at their credibility, their economics, their psychology. They're embarrassed by being human. And Wikipedia absolutely is not. Wikipedia gets nowhere unless everybody who reads it looks for mistakes and corrects the ones, inevitably, that we find in it. Wikipedia is far closer to acknowledging its humanity than paper-based authorities have been. And increasingly, I believe, the authorities who stand before us, either on paper or in person, whether they're in business or they're in government, who present themselves as the authority, I've got the degree, I've got the credentials, I'm in the position, and so I'm right, who speak as gods, will be disdained. They'll be ignored, they'll be ridiculed. And they deserve to be. So these are very human terms I'm talking about, as everybody this afternoon has been. Generosity, intimacy, fallibility, these are core things about being human, each of these things. They each have to do with how we are in relationship with others. And I think these are, in fact, the basic terms I would use to describe what it means to be a human, that is, a social being. We have this opportunity, which is quite extraordinary before us. We are an insanely social creatures. And what's underneath that is the desire to connect. And now we have the connection that is rapidly, at unprecedented pace, spreading across the globe. And you in this room are in a position to enable that spread even more rapidly. This is human connection. That's why we're on the web. It's not because we like catalog shopping particularly. It's not because we can't get enough of being research librarians, although that's important too. It's because fundamentally we want to touch other people. We want to connect with them, which means we want to show them the world as we see it. We want to take our shared world and turn towards it with other people in delight and joy and say, see how my world looks? Do you see how this looks? My world, my culture's world, my individual world, my point of view, our point of view. The web enables us to turn to the world together, to show the world in its difference, and to delight and to joy in it. And there's another word for that. The word is peace. Thank you.